Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode of Wind Waker Unflooded. This is a 3D modeling fan art project where we are bringing to life the world of Hyrule within the world and art style of The Legend of Zelda, The Wind Waker, connecting all of the islands of the Great Sea that we saw in the original Wind Waker game and figuring out what exists below those islands. They are mountaintops. What is the mountain? Learn with me. Through the power of 3D modeling, we are bringing that world to life, answering those questions, showing this version of Hyrule that we never fully got to see. In the game, we saw the area around Hyrule Castle, but that was it. We were told that there was this whole world of Hyrule out there in the Wind Waker that we only literally saw the surface of. We were just scratching the surface. Now let's go beneath the waves, all very literally, with Wind Waker Unflooded. So thank you all for joining me today. As always, I always say this, but today's video is a fun video. I mean, to me, what stands out about this video is that you may see a little bit of the creative process in action, because I was trying to figure out, like, I wanted to work on the Forsaken Fortress. That was a suggested location, and trying to figure out kind of the mountainscape around it and just geographically how it, its relationship with the world, because that's something that wasn't super fleshed out. I had done a little work here and there figuring things out, but it wasn't really like motivated work. It was just like, well, I know that this is on top of a mountain, so how do I figure that out? Because I guess like that is like, I work in two different ways. Maybe it's not that simple, but I think about sometimes when I'm 3D modeling, like, and I think that sometimes this can be a strength. I've talked about this a lot recently, is just kind of like free form, just kind of figuring things out and not really having a vision, and just kind of as if I'm lightly painting or sculpting. And even though I've already said it's like painting and sculpting can be very precise, I guess like sometimes I'm free form with modeling and I just kind of see where the work takes me. Or then sometimes I'm precise. But like either way, whether I have like a super clear plan or not, it takes inspiration and motivation. It takes something in mind to actually like make something that I'm happy with most of the time. And I think that's what like having a vision is. Like having a clear vision is not even necessarily about specificity. And this is a hard lesson, I think, that can be sometimes hard to learn and could take time to figure out as an artist, especially if you're interested in directing. I do a lot of directing as an indie filmmaker within my projects. And I think figuring that out was a lesson within itself, because I think sometimes it's like, especially as you grow creatively and you have something to prove, as a director, it's like you always want to be able to have an answer. You don't want to get stumped, right? You want to be able to show that, yes, I am an artist and I have a vision. And so, ask me any question and there will be a right way and a wrong way, because I'm an artist and I have a clear vision. And I think that sometimes it's not that simple. Sometimes you have a clear vision, but that doesn't necessarily mean there's a right way to realize that vision, right? Or that vision doesn't always have specificity. And sometimes it does, right? Sometimes you're like, actually, in order to tell this story, we need to really get into the specifics. But often I find, especially for collaboration, is that like, people will do their best work when they can do it in the way that inspires them. And as long as that's in line with your vision as well, find a way to offer freedom. Find a way to say like, oh, like, I don't want to force you to make something that isn't good. I want you to make what you want to make if it fits within my story. But I guess all this to say is like, with all of that in mind, I think sometimes, directing a project like Wind Waker Unflooded, and there is a directing element. Even if I'm directing myself, it is directing. It is trying to figure out what my vision is and how I can, how that can translate into the modeling process. That is directing, even if it's directing myself. I think that is a process that requires just being in touch with figuring out like what is motivating me. And if I'm not completely sure what that is, then I need to step back and redirect myself and think about, well, actually, what is my vision before I move forward? And that doesn't always necessarily mean I have concept art. In filmmaking, it does, it depends on, like for filmmaking, I usually don't have like a script that is too precise, aside from dialogue, right? Like usually I don't really have much else in my script besides the dialogue. For instance, And so, and maybe that's just kind of how I work as an artist, is that I'm a little bit more loose with these things, and I think that's definitely impacted Wind Waker Unflooded. But all this to say, I guess, is like I didn't really know what I wanted from the Forsaken Fortress until I started working on it, and I thought about it, and I was like, it's this dark castle. I need to really emphasize that element of it. I don't want to just like put it like it's just sitting on top of a desert mountain. It's like, oh, there's the Forsaken Fortress. I want it to be this dark, foreboding location that reminds you of maybe like the Wicked Witch of the West's castle, right? Like it has to communicate that feeling. I think about the way I saw it in the original game, and it's the same model, but I want to make sure that it communicates that spectacular horror gothic element. And just thinking about this tall castle on a hill, I think, was the way to go. But anyway, I think it's time now for a short message, so I will talk to all of you again after the break. See you then. If you want to be able to support me as a creator, there are several ways that you can make possible the creation of everything that I do. Become a Patreon member. I post all kinds of exclusive content that you can only see first on Patreon. Stuff like behind-the-scenes content for my filmmaking projects, whether that's in-progress scripts, storyboards, rough cuts, anything for my newest films that aren't posted anywhere else besides Patreon. So become a member. You know, there's a whole range of prices, and you can support me even in small ways. That's super meaningful. Supporting me on Patreon too gets you in the credits list of any film that I release while you're a member. And like I said, even a little goes a long way. You can also collaborate with me now through Fiverr. I offer a range of services that could help bring your project to life. And if you've heard any music in the background of this video, that was my music. So feel free to look me up on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you listen to music. Type in Joe Kendrick. That's JoeKendrick. Look up Joe Kendrick on Spotify. Supporting me is super meaningful. I don't make any ad revenue on Wind Waker Unflooded. If you see an ad on the videos, because YouTube is putting ads on the videos, I'm not making any ad revenue from this project. It's completely not monetized for me. So if you want to be able to support me as a creator, any way that you can do that means a lot, and it goes towards the creation of all that I do. So thank you to everyone who's supported me along the way. And we're back, and we're back, and we're back. Welcome back. You know, we were just kind of talking about the inspiration behind the Forsaken Fortress. Because like I said, it's like originally I was planning on making the height of the mountain come up to about sea level in the original game, so that the Forsaken Fortress would have just been sitting, you know, on the top of this mountain there. And I think that could have been valid, but it's just as I thought about it, I was like, actually, it needs to be this dark, foreboding location. Let's put it on like this kind of narrow mountain that's supporting it in a similar way that Hyrule Castle is. So it's kind of an inverse to Hyrule Castle in a really proper way. And I think that was an important kind of decision to make, because to really focus on it being this dark castle, the Forsaken Fortress. So just kind of reorienting my vision was the first step. But also in this video, I think you see that like I take several stabs at several different elements. And there's two, and these are geometric problems. Really, like, these aren't creative problems. These are geometric problems, which I think is interesting, because most of what I do is a creative problem, you know. And it's like I'm not gonna call myself the best modeler, but usually I'm not getting into corners because of my modeling ability. Even though I'm not the best modeler, but it's like usually that's not, if there's ever something stumping me, it's not technical, because it's such a low poly art style. It's like, you know, if I want to make something, you know, I can put the shape in there. And that, I don't know, that doesn't always mean that I'm great at realizing a vision. It's just, I guess usually when I run into corners, it's technical. It's conceptual, not technical. Excuse me. Usually, that's not always the case. Sometimes it is technical. I don't know, like maybe just to be honest with the process. But usually it's a conceptual issue. But in figuring out the Forsaken Fortress, I was trying to figure out just like very geometrically, how am I going to smooth over? There's all these rocks that jut out from the Forsaken Fortress in the original game, and I want to smooth that over, transition to now a mountain underneath it, / maybe I actually want the Forsaken Fortress itself to extend, to have a couple more towers and walls to suggest that there's a little more verticality to the original structure that was eventually covered up by the sea. And I think that's kind of, it was an interesting question, just trying to figure out, well, what can I get away with? Can I just have like, a simple set of bricks underneath it? Like, what does it really need to look like? And just kind of figuring out that, what can I get away with, and how can I create this kind of like, extend the walls of the Forsaken Fortress vertically and make sure that it transitions in a way that doesn't feel too cheap. And I'm trying to figure out like that balance of like, I'm happy to do some original modeling, but also if I can copy paste a couple elements, can I get away with that? And that's always the question of Wind Waker Unflooded, right? Because it's like, I want to be able to take shortcuts when it makes sense to, right? I don't want to give myself extra work if it's not actually going to benefit the project. And it's just kind of answering that question of like, I'm happy to do original structures, but yeah, I don't want to waste my time. And if I can get away with copy pasting something, I will. That is the scope of this project. Because of the scope of this project, that's a necessary philosophy, right? This is such a big project that anywhere where I can save time, I think is okay to say, yeah, like let's kind of speed this up, as long as it doesn't harm the output. And if I look at the Forsaken Fortress, maybe in a couple weeks, maybe a couple months, I'll look at it again and go, oh, maybe I shouldn't have cheaped out. I have this repeating element, and maybe I shouldn't have done that way. And that's just part of the process. Who knows? Maybe I will think that later. But there's also other things to work on before that. Like, there's all these other little rocks and things that were jutting out of the Great Sea that I now also, I still need to connect that to the world. There's these boats that are split in half. And I like the idea of maybe even suggesting they're pre-flood somehow. I don't know. I don't know if that would even make sense, but at least within the world of Wind Waker Unflooded, I think it'd be cool to keep the boat for a second, just as an ominous kind of, how'd that get there? I don't know, maybe that doesn't make sense, but I like the idea right now. But I still need to figure out, like, well, what is that resting on? How do I integrate that into the world? Is there a rock? Is there a mountain? What is it jutting out from? Those are all questions I need to figure out, but for another video. So I do want to wrap up here. As always, y'all, thank you all so much for watching. Thank you for listening to me ramble on and on about different things. I try to make it about different things. I don't want to repeat myself too much. But as always, leave a comment down below if you have any ideas, criticisms, concerns. I want to know what y'all think. Comment down below. If you have any feedback in response to this episode, or just any ideas about what you want to see next, locations pulled from other games, or new locations for Wind Waker Unflooded that you think make sense within this new world. Things that you go, oh, it would make sense to have this thing here, right? I want to know all of those thoughts, so comment down below. Comment down below. That's it. That's all I gotta say. Thank you all so much for watching. Without further ado, I'll let you go.